Aloha, everyone. This is your favorite Filipino rookie graphic novelist, Choz Belen, coming to you from beautiful Hawaii. Just want to wish everyone a happy belated New Year. I know 2021 is off to kind of a rocky start, but just want to wish everyone a blessed and healthy rest of the year. Right now, you're listening to a podcast we titled Making Momo, because it's about me making the graphic novel Momo. In this podcast, you're not just going to hear from me. You're also going to hear from a good friend of mine and my personal cousin for life, my actual cousin for life. His name's Topher Volante, so he's going to help me co-host. He's one of my favorite people to talk to. Really smart dude, incredibly insightful, and he's just got a great outlook on life. I needed him on this podcast. As a disclaimer, podcasting is new to us, something we've never done before, but I can promise you that we're going to try really hard to pretend to know what we're doing. So please be patient with us. In this podcast, we're going to dive deep into all the things that went into the making of my first graphic novel, Momo, Monsters of the Motherland. We're going to talk about everything from the heroes, the monsters, the Filipino themes and culture in general. We're also going to delve into my creative process, my career experience in terms of the book, the concept to execution, both in writing it and illustrating it. Spoiler alert, if you haven't read the book before, I will be revealing some important plot details. So just keep that in mind moving forward. If you have read the book, this should be a fun and informative listen for you. I hope it makes the reading experience that much more fulfilling. I think that's it for the intro. So without further ado, I proudly present Making Momo.
Hey, man.
Hey, what's up, Toph?
How you feeling?
I feel great.
You feeling good?
Yeah, I feel
You're
great.
looking good.
You? Oh,
I
thanks.
think you should write more books. I think it looks good on you.
I wrote one.
Yeah, you did.
Right? So that's a start.
That's
yeah.
a start.
We also feel great. You know why? Because we're in a great place to be in right now.
We are in a great place.
Yeah.
And where is that? Where are we?
We're in beautiful, sunny Hawaii.
Yes.
Isn't that a great place to be in?
Yeah, we've been here for about a week. And before we get into that, I think we should save that for another podcast. But tell us why we're here. What's this project we're working on together? And
yeah, so we're here because I just self-published my first book, my first graphic novel called Momo, Monsters of the Motherland.
Wait a second. Is this all new coming of age graphic novel inspired by real life experiences and popular Filipino ghost stories?
You betcha. You betcha it is.
No way.
Yeah, it totally is. It's the 250-page book where we follow a group of Filipino-American siblings and their friends as they embark on a journey of personal growth and cultural discovery on their way to becoming Filipino monster hunting heroes.
So I read your book and
thanks, man.
Man, blown away. Yeah. Blown away.
That means
I came
a lot.
away, I don't know, super invested in the story, the premise, and all of these characters, this world that you've built. It really made me want more, man.
Yeah.
So some of the things I want to talk to you about is this nostalgic feeling that I had, as I was reading it, these childhood memories, of the stories our parents or our grandparents, aunts and uncles used to tell us when we were kids. This balance you had between these funny interactions and jokes between the children, and then you have these scary sort of illustrations of demons and spirits. It was a thrill. It was an absolute thrill and compelling.
Thanks.
And the last thing I want to talk to you about was it made me feel really proud to be Filipino. You know, these stories don't get told a lot, or even when I was growing up, or even now, there's really no content around this. So it felt fresh, even though the stories were old. You know, so what inspired you to write this book?
Yeah, so early on, I always knew I had this weird fascination with monsters. So in Western pop culture, there was Frankenstein, werewolf, Dracula, Creature from the Blue Lagoon, Bride of Frankenstein. I remember my parents bringing me to Universal Studios, and I'd get to see these characters in real life. I was so excited. I loved watching their movies and reading their books. And then, shouts to our cousin May, because I remember we used to go over her house, and she had this collection of books about these more modern mythological creatures, creatures like Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and Jersey Devil. And it's like aliens and UFOs, Chupacabra, I remember we used to, we'd be out in like the real world, and I'd be looking for these creatures, we'd be like playing in the woods, and I'd like look around, like, is Bigfoot going to show up? I'm so excited to see Bigfoot. Or we'd be driving past like this giant lake, and is there going to be like some Loch Ness Monster showing up, so I always knew I was fascinated with these creatures, and to tie it back into the Filipino lore, because that's a part of that's what I was interested too, is bringing tying it in with my identity as a Filipino, right? And tying it in with the Filipino lore, because we have our own catalog of monsters, and we call them Momo, right? And so I knew when I found out, when I was searching for a title, I kept coming back to Momo, right? Because that was a big theme for us growing up. You better watch out, like the Momo's gonna get you, or
the proverbial
Momo in there.
boogeyman.
Yeah, it was just a constant thing they used to warn us about. Because Momo means, typically it means monster in the Philippines, or ghost. But depending on where you live, it could also mean like a specific monster, not as generic. It could be like the boogeyman, right? It could be like an individual monster that comes around and haunts you,
right? So
that's where the title came from. And I just this fascination I just carried with me into adulthood, and when you asked about what inspired me to write this book, that was it, and it seemed like a great opportunity for me to introduce these characters from Filipino lore and just play with those ideas.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So let's fast forward into how you got started and how you carried this fascination that you spoke about into your early career, and when you decided that you were actually going to write the book.
Right. So, as you know, I'm a digital artist by trade. Graduated from School of Visual Arts in New York City, and I'd been working in the industry for a while, and I had just come to a point in my career where I was ready to take on a new project, something that felt completely personal to me. Everything before then had been more of a collaborative thing. And I was trying to figure out, what can I do with all these skills and all this experience that I had acquired over the years. And I kept coming back to just the fundamental idea of like, create and tell a story, right? What is a story you want to tell? And what are you passionate about? And I was thinking a lot about, like I said, identity, and this fascination I had with the monsters, and that would be a nice way for me to express my heritage,
right?
And tie that in with representation, right? That seems like a fun idea. So, without any kind of clear direction or concrete idea of what I wanted to do, I just started writing, I took all these Filipino monster stories I'd heard growing up, did some research, and just put pen to paper, and combined that with all these personal experiences I had growing up that I wanted to share as well, and started to assemble them, tried to weave them into this kind of quilt of whatever it would ultimately be. And the idea of turning it into a graphic novel came about because, it seemed like this was an opportunity to go back to basics, right?
Sure.
Go back to the fundamentals of like who I was coming up as an artist, and me, to tie it into nostalgia, me being that kid again, right? Where's that kid that was drawing comics at his Lola's house, like on the floor, just coming up with characters and stories, and that was kind of when I decided like to solidify the idea of like, oh, this is what I want to do. This is when I want to write a book.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's really amazing how everything ties in like that. You had this compulsion to tell something personal in your own voice, and sort of use the skills that you've acquired along those years to do it. I think that's a feeling we all share in common. So that's just lovely. So who is this book for?
Yeah. So who's this book for? You write what you know. And let me just tell this story first to set this up. One day I had visited my parents, and I started, we were cleaning the house, going through some old stuff. And I found these old cassette tapes that I used to listen to. If you don't know what cassette tapes are, it's what we used to listen to music on, and my niece and nephew were with me, and I shared that with them. I was like, oh man, look at all these old songs I used to listen to, and they just had no idea what these things were. Were completely dumbfounded by like what these devices, the contraptions.
Did you show them the boombox?
Yeah, there was a boombox. They didn't know what the boombox was. Yeah, it was it was ancient to them. Yeah, ancient technology. And because of that, it kind of dawned on me like, oh, this is how history works, man. Like things change, things evolve, and like what is old can sometimes get lost, after generations. And it led me to think about those stories that I was talking about, those Filipino monster stories, and those things they experience in their generation, right? Those stories, those tales would get lost in time if we didn't continue that tradition of sharing that and passing that down to the next generation. Yeah. Right. So that's what kind of compelled me to share and continue the tradition.
Yeah. Right? I love it. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. So when you ask like, who is this book for? I think I can answer that in it's multitudes, right? So there's, I like to think there's a little something for everyone. These monster stories, if you're Filipino, no matter what, you can just take pride in it, knowing that this is your culture. This is your heritage. This is tradition, right? Yeah, and if you're non-Filipino, there's a fun adventure story reminiscent of like a Goonies or Sandlot or Stand By Me. You can also familiarize yourself with the culture. The most important part, I feel, of representation is just raising awareness, sharing your personal experiences. And also for anyone that feels underrepresented, just something that they could see themselves in with these characters. Filipinos can hear the language, they can see the faces, see the food, and see the culture on paper, right? I think that's nice to see. I have nieces and nephews, growing up, and I don't want them to experience the same struggles I had growing up. So yeah, representation is something that's very important to me. Something I'm very passionate about.
I love this idea about representing Filipino culture. There aren't a lot of us out there in the mainstream or part of the cultural zeitgeist that we're in now, which is why I think what you've done here is not only innovative but super helpful. So let's go back to the book and how did you come up with the story?
Yeah, so this story is based off a family trip we took to the Philippines in 2001. I actually came up with the idea after watching season 1 of Stranger Things on Netflix and seeing the response that people had to the show. You know, it was incredible. There was this immense amount of energy where people had been backing it and super interested in this story that they were telling. It was weird. Kids were relating to it, but also adults loved this nostalgia, you know, that it brought. Like I was talking about with Goonies and all those different stories. And all of a sudden, everything started to come together. Right, my fascination with monsters, my passion for representation, and finally the narrative framework I was looking for. Right, I thought to myself, boom, there it is. Stranger Things in the Philippines.
This makes total sense. Yeah, and I get it. And I didn't know this going in, that this was your inspiration. And after reading it, yeah, it hits. So let's talk a little bit more about technique and the sort of technical process you went through when you put this book together. You know, what kind of crayons did you use? No, Crayola? So, you know, I don't even know if I know any other crayons. Sorry for the interruption there, folks. Had to take a quick detour to the funny bone there, but more seriously, talk more about
I will talk more about my technical process after the
Please.
Absolute troll job you just laid on me right there, which I will say I do respect because it was pretty funny. But I'm gonna address the listeners with the answer that they deserve, right? Okay, so how can I talk about this? The look and feel. Obvious Stranger Things tie-ins, you know, but since it's not a live action situation, in terms of some inspiration for the illustration, I took a lot from Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's another great coming of age story that I really enjoyed. It's a great TV series, and it had the right the tone I was looking for. You know, it had the right feel of youth and energy and adventure, but still action. But it also told a very important story. So a lot of inspiration there. In terms of me illustrating it myself, I had a lot of apprehension in terms of trying to do this on my own, trying to self-illustrate, because I was just super insecure of my drawing skills. You know, I'm not an illustrator. You know, I'm more of an animator, an editor. So
it doesn't show, man. It doesn't show. Like, I know I was ribbing on you before. It's a really great job, man.
Right, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for coming back. It was a long journey to becoming comfortable with my abilities to illustrate.
So let's talk about the book. Let's get into it. You know, you've created this wonderful world of monsters and heroes, and why don't you take us through this roster of monsters?
Right, the monsters of the Motherland. Right. So first off, we have the Aswang. Right, these are shape-shifting demon dogs. You know, my grandma used to warn me about these monsters. Be careful because anybody could be one. Duende, right? We have these mischievous gnomes that can bring good or bad luck based off how you treat them. They always say whenever you're, walking into Gubat and you don't want to intrude on their homes, you always have to say tabi tabi po, which means like pardon me. You know, so address yourself. The Capre, these are these tree giants, these giant tree monsters who smoke cigars in the forest. When you're walking around at night, always look up because you might see like these giant creepy smiles. And if it's the ashes, if you feel ashes falling down on you, it might be their cigars, the cigar's ashes. And then we have the Manananggal, right? This is the big bad. This is the big boss of the book. This is a weird one. This is a crazy looking top half, essentially the torso of a demonic vampire woman who flies around. She's got these giant wings. She flies around and preys on small children and pregnant women at night. She eats their fetuses. It's a crazy looking thing. And then finally we have the Lady in White. You know, this ghost woman who haunts the roads, and you know, drivers usually pick her up thinking it's this beautiful woman, only to, you know, discover it's this this ghost who haunts them in their vehicles. That one's the most popular one.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You know, and speaking of the Lady in White, that's the one figure or story that I remember the most about our childhood. It's I don't know, something about it. Maybe it was driving through the vacation and hearing that story.
Right.
It always stood out to me.
Yeah, commonly known as the White Lady.
Yeah, which is a bit...
Fear of the White Lady was not... was not a story. Was not something I wanted connected to the book. I just didn't want to have that conversation.
Yeah, it was the right choice to make.
Thank you.
And let's not forget about the main characters.
Yeah, right.
You know, the children of the sun, as you eloquently put.
Yes. So the main characters, the children of the sun, their personalities are based off the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This is my favorite franchise growing up. So I love that story and the dynamic between those siblings. So I wanted that same energy and dynamic between these kids.
Interesting.
You know?
Yeah.
So we have the main character, Ren, right? She is representative of Leonardo, who was this intense but reluctant leader, right?
Yeah.
And then we have Riz, who is like Raphael, I envisioned. Super competitive, but also super witty, and is always butting heads with the leader, right? Raph always used to butt heads with Leo, and so Riz is always butting heads with Ren.
Yeah.
And Raim is kind of like Michelangelo, right? This kind of like fun-loving, innocent, and he brings this kind of like tension relief, right? He's also like this kind of fulcrum between Ren and Riz. You know, he's getting in between because Riz is always harking on him, and then Ren is always defending him.
Yeah, he's got Cowabunga, right? Is that how they...
And then there's Pootie.
Yes, my personal favorite. You know, he had so much intention about learning the culture, and I found it so endearing.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. No, he has in terms of Ninja Turtles, he's representative of Donatello, who is the intellectual one of the group, but also insecure. He's that, but also he's kind of an ode to all my non-Filipino friends growing up. You know, growing up, all my friends would come over, my non-Filipino friends would come over, and they were just so completely amazed and fascinated by Filipino culture, like the food and the traditions and everything. And they were just so about it. They wanted to know more. It was so exotic and foreign to them. You know, they had so much interest in it, more than I had, because I had... growing up, you just take it for granted, right? This isn't anything interesting.
Totally.
The food we eat this every day, you know?
Yeah.
So he's kind of Pootie represent. He's kind of like the walking Wikipedia, you know, whenever in the book, whenever I try to introduce something new about the culture, he's always the one to chime in and be like, well, this is what this is what this really is, right?
The explainer.
Yeah, he's the explainer. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with that character as well. And then finally, out of those main group of kids are Benji and Nene, right?
Right.
So if you can think about Benji as this kind of Casey Jones rogue character that comes in, and he's trying to save his sister from the Manananggal, right? Kind of a tough street kid. And I really like that. I wanted that contrast between the Filipino American, the Philam kids, right, and the local kids, right? These kind of in the eyes of the local kids, like the spoiled brat, like, oh, you're from the States,
right. You must be rich.
You don't know what it's like to be out here, and
right.
To be in the streets, and you're so lucky and fortunate, right? You don't know what it's like out here.
Yeah.
I like that dynamic because like it's kind of how we felt when, like I said, back in that Philippines trip in 2001, kind of how it felt.
Yeah.
There's kind of this separation. And I wanted that to come through, that dynamic.
Great. Yeah. And another character that I kind of want to explore a little bit more, because she stood out to me, was Ren. She reminded me of my sisters and my nieces, these strong females who can be stubborn at times, but always had good judgment and always stuck up for their family at all times, or not just family, just people that they love. Can you speak a little bit more about Ren?
Yes. So these are kids fighting monsters. It's a crazy thing. So how are we expected to believe that these kids who've never even seen a monster before can somehow defeat one? Right?
Yeah.
So it was super important that especially the younger kids, that they have a tough, strong presence leading them into these battles, and Ren was that. We explore her past the most through multiple flashbacks and find out that she had dealt with a lot of bullying growing up. And all these experiences have prepared her for the adventures in the Philippines, And it's important to talk about, I found it was important to talk about bullying, because it's a struggle that has always happened, right? Since the beginning of time, people have been bullied, and it continues today. Talking to my niece and nephews about it, it's an ongoing battle. And how can you even begin to combat these issues if we don't even know what each other is going through? And sharing these stories, sharing these personal experiences, I think is the beginning of it. Super important. And I think, like I say, it's going to take a lot of people doing a lot of different things in different ways, right? And this is me doing my part, me trying to do my part, and in sharing my stories. And I hope that sharing my stories can help kids that are in the same situation that I was growing up, or similar situations growing up, in understanding that they're not alone.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful, man. And look, you said before, it's still happening today, and it isn't right, and it's gotta stop. And I hope that message gets across to your readers and to anyone listening now. And another thing that stood out was this relationship Ren had with her grandmother. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, Ren's relationship with her Lola, right? I know I wanted a strong matriarchal character because that's kind of what I grew up with, right? Our Lola, her story of immigration, our family story of immigration begins with her, right? The story in the book, the story the dad tells Ren, that's verbatim the story of our family coming to America, right? She stayed in the Philippines, working, continuing to bring in money for the family, while her husband Lolo and all the kids immigrated to the States, all to afford them a better life. For 2 years, man,
Yeah.
That's a long time to sacrifice away from your kids at like such a young, crucial age.
Huge sacrifice.
Yeah, it's a huge sacrifice, but she did it because she knows she wanted her kids to have better opportunities, and I really respect that, and I wanted to honor that and honor her. This theme of culture transcending generations, right? The passing down of these stories, the monster stories from our Lola and Lolo down to us, right? And the Lola in the story passing down her sword to Ren. There's all these things kind of tie in together, and I think it was a way for me to show my respect for my grandparents and to honor their memory, because I really appreciate everything they did to pave the way for us here.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, right? Is there these monsters? They're not monsters. These are just adversity that people face in life, and it's told through these fictional characters. And yeah, that's great. And you know what? If they were alive to see what you've accomplished here, they would be so proud of you, man.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Yeah.
And
my angels, man, may they rest in peace.
Yeah. So I'm not ready to stop talking about the book just yet. Let's talk a little bit more about this mysterious warrior that comes in to save the children.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's get into it. So here's our spoiler alert. There's a mysterious character, a mysterious warrior that the kids are introduced to in the middle of the book. It saves them. We learn later on that this mysterious warrior turns out to be Lapu Lapu, Datu Lapu Lapu, the chief of Mactan Bay, the legendary folk hero in Filipino lore. Was an actual guy who, his origins are something of great renown. Like, this guy helped prevent the colonization of the Philippines from Spain and defeated Ferdinand Magellan. Is incredible character in our history. And is interesting. I knew he was going to play a prominent role even before the Stranger Things inspiration. It's funny, the original idea of this book was going to be Filipino Avengers. That was like how it first began. I knew I wanted to do something with the Philippines, and he was supposed to be the main protagonist. Along with various other historical figures throughout Filipino history. So yeah, he was an important guy.
Yeah, that's funny you say that. Because I still think this Avengers theme holds up and it's still pretty relevant. I don't want to give away too much, but this character Lapu Lapu is still the leader of the Children of the Sun, and each one of these characters can substitute for any one of the heroes that are involved in the Avengers. So let's switch gears and let's talk about this underworld that you've created, where Lapu Lapu gets stuck in, where all of his struggle and strife comes from, with living with all of these demons. What was your inspiration for that?
So for the underworld, obviously there's tie-ins with the Upside Down, right? Another Stranger Things reference. Because I had to figure out, like, there's all these monsters, right?
Yeah.
Where do they come from? Did they just manifest out of nowhere? Like, where, did they have always been around? And in my research, I discovered there's this spirit world in ancient Filipino history called Anito, right? It's this spirit world that old Filipinos believed in before Christianity. Before Christianity, there was a lot of Hinduist ties to our religious beliefs. We used to pray to to these different spirits. All these good spirits brought fortune. Like you prayed to the gods of the weather to have a good crop season,
Right.
or you pray to the bad spirits so they don't bring death and terror and all these malicious, other things. So I needed, and I found it to be a good way to connect these two worlds, right? There's the modern day world where the children of the sun live, right? You have
Right.
Ren and all the siblings, and they live in 2001. But I also was very passionate about telling Lapu Lapu's story.
Yeah.
So having him get trapped in this Anito, in the underworld, and where this world where time is lost, right?
Right.
And we can bring him into the modern world.
Right.
I was really excited about including this, because now we have this new dynamic of fish out of water, right? Here's this guy from
You figured it out.
the 1600s,
Yeah.
and we bring him to modern world. It was just very exciting when I found a way to connect all of this together.
Yeah. Well done.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, and that sort of brings us to the end or the conclusion of this project that we're doing. I just want to thank you for bringing me in to your world and bringing me into to this podcast and allowing me to co-host with you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for doing it, man. I couldn't have done it without you. I really appreciate you doing this.
You could have
as
done
well.
it without me, yeah. But I appreciate that, and let's talk about the future. What can readers and fans expect from you next, and where can we buy the book?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't even need to do a spoiler alert. If you read this, if you've gotten this far, I'll do it anyway. Spoiler alert. At the end of the book, right, we leave on a cliffhanger. We find out that Benji is trapped in Anito, right? He's made it in this underworld. And he meets another mysterious warrior who turns out to be Nene, right? His
Right.
sister, who
Yeah.
we had no idea what was in the future for her.
It's
She
a great
had passed
twist.
away.
Yeah.
So she's still alive, but lo and behold, she's older now.
Right.
She might be, I don't want to give away how old she is or where she's at in her life, but she might be older than Benji. We don't know yet. So I'm in book 2, I'm excited to investigate their relationship now and how that has changed. Right. But also, I can also talk about how, being in here in Hawaii, I'm going to be drawing a lot of inspiration for the new locations we're going to be at in book 2. Because one of the Philippines' greatest assets is their tropical locations, right?
Right.
We're all familiar with these vacation spots.
Yeah, it's white
Boracay,
sand.
El Nido,
Yeah.
Palawan, Cebu City, Coron, Puerto Princesa. All these beaches are going to play a big part in book 2. So I'm excited to tell you guys about that. And, I've already started concepting, and I'm currently assembling the story. So hopefully I'll be finished writing it by the end of the year. And where can we buy the book? You can buy the book on Amazon.
Amazon.
Search Momo Monsters of the Motherland, and you can buy it in either it's available in digital or print, whatever works for you.
There you have it, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that
Straight
it?
from the author himself.
Yeah. Great.
So, that was fun, man.
Yeah. We did it.
We did it.
We're at the end.
We're at the end.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Thank
Sign
you.
out. Yeah. Say goodbye to everyone.
Oh, people are listening to this? Goodbye, everyone.
And that's it. That's a wrap on our very first podcast. Thanks to everyone who made it through. Thanks for listening to Making Momo. I hope that was very helpful in giving you a better understanding of the book and all the motivations that went into its creation. I just want to give out some quick shout outs. Shouts to Toph, of course, for co-hosting with me. He did a wonderful job. Couldn't have done it without him. Shouts to Carla our cousin in the Philippines for editing the book. She did an incredible job helping me with not only the story, but the language. I wanted to include the Filipino language. And, I'm a very disappointing Filipino. I don't speak the language that very well, that well. But she helped out a lot with that. Not only that, but like some of the history stuff. I did research, you could say, on like some of the history, but she helped kind of fine tune and polish a lot of that up. So I really appreciate her help. Shouts to Conrad Javier, the brilliant illustrator who did the cover, an amazing cover. He's a great artist. You should follow him on Instagram. And also shouts to Cam Dela, my good friend and music producer and artist who helped with the theme song, the music for the podcast. That single is going to be coming out soon, so stay tuned for it, the full version of it. But again, he's amazing. It's a brilliant theme song. I really appreciate his help with that. Check out his new single, Summer. That's Summer with a question mark. Wherever you get your music from, it's available. Thanks again to everyone who supported the book. All your contributions help, and they mean so much to me. I really appreciate all of you that went out and bought the book, both on print and digital. I can't thank you enough. If you ever want me to sign it, just find a way to reach out to me. I promise I'll do my best to sign every copy for everyone that asks for one. Remember to support representation. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I hope all of you can agree with me. That's a very important issue that we need to continue pushing. It's a battle we need to keep fighting. So let's do that. So it's, like I said, it's going to take a lot of people doing a lot of different things in different ways, and this was my way of contributing. So I hope you're all contributing in your ways as well. We're going to continue to grow this product and this platform. Stay tuned, because we got a lot of stuff coming up in the future. Book 2, as well as other content you can find on all the various social media platforms. You can find the updates. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. I need to start a TikTok. I might ask my nephew, who's really great at it. But yeah, that's going to be some form of Momo_comic. You can find the links on the official webpage via my site. So go to chozbelen.com/Momo. That's chozbelen.com/MUMU. There's also a link on the webpage to purchase the book through Amazon. So you can click on it there. And if you haven't already, please rate and review the book on Amazon. Give it 5 stars if you like. It'll go a long way in furthering the book. So thank you in advance for that. I appreciate you all again. Thanks for making it all the way. And remember, life is not a constant fight with adversity. It's about protecting the ones you love, your ideals and values. When you look at it that way, life gets easier. In God. if you've never had a Filipino friend or anything like that,
Doubt it.
no,
We're everywhere.
Everyone knows what.
Yeah, everyone's got
We're just
somebody.
breakdancing somewhere.
What happened? What did I do? I didn't do nothing.
So if anyone's gonna do it, why not just be me?
Right.
So
Basically, you had no choice. He's got cowabunga.
He's got major cowabunga.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. If you had a pregnant a woman in the house, they would eat the fetus, right? It
Sounds like my uncle. I'm sorry, man. I can't help myself, dude. I can't help myself. This is just... we've been taking this too seriously all day, dude. Yeah. You're doing so good, dude. I'm sorry. That's my fault. No. Praise on pregnant woman. I know exactly who we're talking. I don't know if this is usable, dude. It's not usable.